Hey, welcome to day 32. At the beginning of the week, I asked you what you would do if you knew that this was going to be your last night, and especially if you had a little bit of prep time ahead of time to know that this was going to be your last night. We looked at Jesus and we saw that on his last night on the earth, before going to a cross, he spent time to wash people's feet. And then he invited us to do the same. But today, I ask you, what would you say? If you knew that you were on your deathbed, what would you say to your loved ones who are around you? Perhaps you've had a moment in your life where you've actually been with somebody who was in the last moments of their life, and maybe they had time to craft what it is that they were going to say, or maybe it had to be a little bit more spur of the moment. I remember watching a TV show where a son asks his dad, "What would you say to me if this was your last moment, if these were the last words that you were going to say?" And the father, it took him a little bit of time, but he finally said, "I would tell you that I love you." What would you say if this was it? Well, Jesus said quite a bit in that upper room. And again, we're not going to read through all of that over the course of our rest of our time in the 40 days of prep. Although I do encourage you to continue to read in John. But in John 13, we read the words that Jesus at least begins with, or I should say with the order that John has put them. We know that sometimes he doesn't order them in the exact way that things happened. But Jesus looks at his followers, he looks at his disciples, and he explains to them the glory that he's about to receive. And we see that come to fruition with the cross, and we see that come to fruition with the resurrection. But then he looks at them and he says, "This is how people are going to know that you're my followers. Love one another." The way that you love each other is going to tell people a whole lot about what it means to be my follower, to have me as your king, is how you love one another. We read the Apostle Paul's words later in 1 Corinthians, in that chapter that we use so often during weddings, 1 Corinthians 13, where he describes love as being patient and love as being kind. Love does not envy, it is not boastful, it is not conceited. It does not act improperly, it is not selfish, it is not provoked, and it does not keep a record of wrongs. Jesus tells us they're going to know that you're my followers by how you love one another. Paul writes a list of what it means to love one another. How are we doing? How are we doing at being patient and kind with one another? How are we doing with not keeping a record of wrongs that people have done against us, but in forgiving them as Christ has forgiven us? How are we doing? How are you doing? If Jesus were to come and he were to look at you and say, "Hey, my command to you was to love one another," and that they were going to know that you were my disciple based on how you loved each other. I'm not even at this point talking about the world. I'm talking about each other. How are we doing? I encourage you today, as you prepare for Easter, in that ultimate act of love, as we prepare to remember that, take some time to reflect today. How are you loving the body of Christ? For tomorrow, I invite you to read John chapter 13, verses 36 through 38. Again, that's John 13, 36 through 38. And today, take the time to ask yourself, how am I loving others? And then ask Jesus himself, ask the Spirit, ask the Father to help you love one another better. I'll see you tomorrow.